Hello and welcome to the Vita Group Sustainable Podcast Series with myself, Mike Murray, Chief Innovation Officer of the Vita Group.
And me, Natalie Watson, Group Head of Sustainability. Together, we're going to be unravelling some of the common misconceptions of foam and actually tackling how it can be an enabler to the circular economy.
So join us, along with some of our colleagues and guests, as we explore the world of sustainability in PU foam.
We're here this afternoon to discuss life cycle analysis, and I'm here with Julie and Sam. Do you want to just introduce yourselves?
Yeah, I'm Julie Walker. I'm the Technical Manager at Vita Foam in Middleton.
I'm Sam Hill. I'm an Innovation Manager based at Vita Accrington.
The very definition of sustainability sometimes gets lost, but it is all about how do you become more environmentally benign, so reducing your environmental impact. How can you increase your social value, so becoming more socially just, but then also being economically robust. And I think if you balance those three lenses, and sometimes it can be a challenge, but effectively that's what we're doing, is it not?
I think, all areas of the business have some sustainability challenges. It's not necessarily just about making the product with the lowest carbon footprint. It's about maximising your raw material usage so that the more we do from an operational point of view to ensure maximum efficiency, the less raw materials we use for the same output, then that's exactly where we need to be. And that's, again, has been something that we've been driving for a long, long time. But like Sam says, looking at it slightly differently from a sustainability point of view, we don't celebrate that enough necessarily.
No. And I think that reflection, for me, is one of the most fundamental skill sets that anybody can have. Having a model like the life cycle model now that we have, we can reflect with data the decisions that we've made historically.
Yeah.
But then we can use that information to accelerate progress going forward, and it's all within our learning and skill set, isn't it, Mike?
Yeah, it's really taken that emotional out of the sustainable decisions that people make. Sustainability is a really emotional subject when people talk about it. And from that you can get misconceptions, and I think we spoke about that earlier. So I think, being able to put that science-based approach, and let's put facts behind it. And we're not saying some materials are good and some are bad, but what we're saying is these are the options and the choices that we choose between, and it gives an overall environmental impact. And then how do we work from there to reduce? So I think I think the group as a whole took that decision to invest in really understanding life cycle analysis probably a couple of years ago now. But it's led us to some tremendous insights, and not always the ones we thought we were going to find out, which is what science and data is all about.
And our life cycle analysis goes beyond carbon. It's not just about carbon. I know carbon gets the headlines because, of the climate crisis that we're in now, and of course it's absolutely crucial that we take action there, but there are other environmental impact categories that we shouldn't ignore.
Yeah, I think one of our first discussions, I think we said hello and we immediately started talking all things sustainability, as we generally do. But I think we were reflecting right away on the water situation in the northwest of England. We're usually, famously, overrun with water, aren't we? We've got reservoirs all along the M62, for example, and a couple of years ago, these reservoirs were at record low levels, where villages were seen again, where old bridges that hadn't been surfaced for over 100 years were sort of visible again. And I think that gives us this real understanding that, yes, we should concentrate on carbon, but let's not just look at that. We need to try and take this balanced approach so that we're not we don't have these unfortunate consequence really of making a decision and having another accidental issue further down the line. You'd hate for a well-meaning decision to lead to a catastrophe later on.
Absolutely, and Mike, we've probably got an example of that, haven't we, with a development about looking at carbon, but actually as a consequence it halved the water consumption.
Yes, one of the new materials that we were looking at, there was a modest reduction in CO2, but actually the impact on water was almost a 50% reduction on that particular raw material. So it's so important that we look at that overall picture. And there are other elements where you know, everything looks great. You grab those good numbers, and then you look at something down at acidification, for example, and go, oh, that's gone up quite a lot. Why? And I think that's what it allows you to do, is ask the question why and what can we do about it. So, you know, it's a tremendous tool that's just going to become part of everything we do, I think.
And I'm interested now because, Julie, the product configurator that we have on that sits on top of our life cycle analysis model, that's been a really useful tool, hasn't it, working with our customers?
Yeah, we're really fortunate here on site in Middleton because we've got an innovation centre for mattresses as well. So we're able to actually carry out accelerated ageing tests on mattresses and check their durability. So we can check what the durability and expected life cycle of a mattress is, what's its intended lifespan. So we can make sure that we're not making the wrong decisions when we're sat with mattress manufacturers in the design process, making sure that the products are as durable as possible. But then what we can do is then plug that into a configurator and look at the life cycle analysis of the finished item, not just of the foam material that's part of the components of that mattress. So it's enabled us to help, not just for us to make products with unintended consequences, but to help our customers not to make those products with unintended consequences by material substitution into the mattresses, which could have a detrimental effect on the lifespan of that product.
And that's been a huge development from the innovation centre that we have here at Middleton and those testing requirements. So that's kind of like the customer side, but Sam, you also work with the pilot plant at Accrington, which is more the material side. So the two seem linked.
Yeah, I think we've found that great working relationship very early on, I think, between myself and Julie especially, because we're quite close together, aren't we? Very close
today.
But we've just managed to work together well enough that when we're looking at these new, more novel, smaller scale materials that our suppliers are producing at pilot scale, they can't afford to ship samples to every Vita facility to hope that we can all develop things and make our learnings together. We've got this approach now where we can try and concentrate this experimental procedure and use the pilot plant properly so that we can all learn from it. But it means as well our suppliers know where to send these materials to. They know that if we get it there, that's where most of the information will come from. So yeah, we've got a very good ability now to take these alternative materials in that our plants necessarily can't handle every time. But we can use that as a rapid screening tool now to see the validity or the applicability of these materials into some of our formulations. And then, you know, it opens up a discussion almost immediately then to follow up with our suppliers, understand their credentials, their paperwork around their claims on sustainability in conjunction then with what we see from a physical property relationship question. Yeah.
And it allows us to be much more challenging of ourselves, but also of others that are just so fundamental. We're so closely linked in the value chain, aren't we? I think that is abundantly clear now. Our customers, ourselves and our suppliers and academia, we're all interlinked, but having those science-based facts and data behind that, we can push back, can't we?
Yeah, I think the more, at least in my experience, the more I learn, I just learn more questions then from that to ask. So I realise that I know even less than I thought.
Yes, true.
So I think just by having the conversations, having the ability to do the work, just allows you this opportunity to learn more and to learn more about the different considerations that we ought to be making during our product selection. But I think as we become more conversant in the methodologies that different suppliers apply to understand their impacts, it gives us much more of a better standing to question and to really be more quizzical, to not just accept a number written on a piece of paper with a rubber stamp on it. We've got to understand what stands behind that. And I think we're very lucky that we've been able to invest the time to gain that knowledge, to gain the understanding so that we can understand these figures and understand where they come from and not just be reliant on a figure, because we have to obviously challenge the data as well, because it's the same way that Julie 10 years ago, if someone said use this polyol, it increases your hardness by 25%, you didn't just say, okay, thanks. We tested it.
Yeah.
We experimented. We understood what went behind it. So it's the same thing now in sustainability. It's just a little bit more abstract, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think more people have got skin in the game now, right? I think because information, well, you look at the global risks, disinformation and misinformation are the top global risks for the next 2 years. There's like a smokescreen really in terms of what's a fact and what's not. I think legislation's moving a bit, isn't it, in Europe now with the Green Claims Directive. Do you think that's going to kind of, sort out the weeds that we're seeing, so to speak?
Yeah, I think that it will work to the benefit of companies like ourselves who have done the background work. I mean, Sam is absolutely meticulous in questioning the raw material suppliers when they come forward with a product to know where our boundaries are and where their boundaries are in terms of the data that we're generating. And that's gone through with a fine tooth comb. So I think knowing that our data is safe and secure means that when the legislation does come through, that we're able to put a stake in the ground and be absolutely certain of the claims that we are making. And then it'll be interesting to see if everybody else is able to do the same, I would say.
Absolutely. And Mike, I think we've already seen the vast array of claims that are out now, and I think whilst we have our own house in order, I think there is going to be a bit of a transition period for everybody else, isn't there? I
think it has to. We've all been to exhibitions and conferences and seen, our material is 100% sustainable or 100% green or 10 times better than something else, and it just brings the industry into disrepute really, because the customers just go, well, I just don't know what to believe. I mean, I think that seeing that as a company, I think what drove us to saying actually we've got to put science behind the data we generate, because these claims are just going to do damage to ourselves and the industry. So, and I think that's been shown to be correct.
Absolutely. And I think now there's going to be legislation to support it, but that transition period, I think we're just going to have to rely on companies to be forthcoming with data. I think upstream from our suppliers' perspective, it's getting there, isn't it? I think we're getting a steady stream now of that data, but downstream from our customers, the end of life kind of data area, it seems like it's playing catch up a little bit.
I think the end of life scenario is quite a difficult one in our material specifically. So I spoke about my experience before Vita. It's quite easy to look at where waste goes from your household. It's quite easy to track. Whether we do it well enough is up for debate, but perhaps the materials that then we sell into the comfort, furniture, bedding type of markets is a little bit harder to manage, I expect. So I think there's a challenge there, isn't there, to us in our industry. I'm looking at Julie because you've got a lot of experience at least working on these kind of topics, haven't you? I
think it all just comes back to the thing of collaboration, actually, and saying for us to take steps forward in our understanding and our experience and in the products that we can provide, we need to work with others. So we need to be working with industry bodies to help us to understand what happens to foam at the end of its life in all aspects. And we need to be working with suppliers, but we also need to be working with academia to fully, to be able to fully analyse all of our finished products and where they go to, and enable us to get that data. Like I said, we've done a lot of work, but there's a lot still to be done, I would say.
So we've spoken a lot about LCA, but I think, again, just from our listeners' perspective, it might just be worthwhile asking the question to any one of you, actually, is what is LCA?
There you go.
And then the other person can say, why is it important? And then the last person says, how are we doing it?
LCA stands for life cycle analysis. There you go, that's my part.
How do you spell it?
And a life cycle analysis is it's an analysis to look at the environmental impact of your product from its conception, from its extraction as a very raw material, if it's crude oil, for example, all the way through to its production, its synthesis, its application into an end product, the use of that product, and then its end of life scenario. So whether that is landfill, whether it's energy from waste, or whether it's from recycling. So it's having a methodical approach according to some ISO norms, which try to standardise the approach to a degree. But it's to try and look at these environmental measures from every stage of that material's impact across its life. But obviously it's very difficult. It's incredibly intense, it's incredibly close. So the model that we speak about today, ours looks at what's called a cradle to gate. So it's almost like a bingo. I don't want to use the word, but you know what I mean. There's acronyms coming out of everybody's ears when you start to talk about sustainability, and it can almost be quite confusing to some people, I imagine. So ours is cradle to gate. So it's from the extraction all the way to our factory's gate, because we can't currently model effectively what happens with our foam when it leaves us. We need to start working with our customers more on this collaboration piece, and we need to start working with waste management systems and providers and recycling routes to fill that gap in. But you know, there's some industry average kind of data to give you a kind of idea to fill in the gaps that you don't know. But obviously nothing beats primary data. So that means the data which is very specific to your example. So the life cycle analysis is just a very deep dive into understanding every environmental impact that your material could have had or will have across its full lifespan.
And Mike, I mean, thank you for that, Sam. That was literally meticulous. I loved it.
Did it make sense?
Absolutely, absolutely. If anyone has any questions that are listening, then send them to Dr. Sam Hill. He'll be more than willing to answer. Mike, our own life cycle analysis model, how did that come about, and how do we use it today? What does it cover?
Well, I think when we started looking at, and it really did come from some of the greenwashing claims that we were seeing. You know, people were making claims around all materials that you said, well, where's the data? And so we really started to look at how can we put some data. We've taken a science-based approach to our sustainability and how we reduce down to net zero. We need to take the same approach to how we put real data behind our products and claims. And as Sam said, an LCA is the only scientific and validated way to say how environmental your process or product is. And then we said, okay, well, let's have a look around. Can you buy models? There are models. You can go and buy a model. You can rent one off the shelf. You can actually get a free one if you went into Google. But does it tell us what we actually need to know? So some of the databases out there, they'll give you one number for PU. We've got hundreds of grades made in different locations around the world, with different environmental impacts. We had to be able to model it all. So we actually went out to a third party that was an expert in this field, and actually we built our own model from scratch so that we can tune it through chemistry, we can tune it through the additives we use, our manufacturing location, whether we're using green electricity, we can allow for transport. So we can actually give an LCA calculation, cradle to gate for every foam grade that we manufacture. Many of those have been verified. So we say our model's now verification ready, but we know that we have a good, robust way of looking at the impacts, and our data gets better every day. And we're working with our suppliers really, really hard to get that data better and better.
And that life cycle analysis model that we have now, it has the capability to measure gate to grave as well, doesn't it?
It does. So at the moment, as Sam said, we don't have enough robust data to look at the whole life cycle of actually how our product's used, how it's distributed, how it's collected, and actually how its end of life is treated. But it's there for us to turn on. So the model is built with it there. We've just turned it off for the moment. But so I think one of our objectives is to really engage in an industry-wide model to try and put that data there, because it is important.
And coming back to the product configurator then, how does that fit in with the life cycle analysis model? Yeah,
it's completely linked in with it. I think we use those life cycle analysis for a number of reasons. Primarily, we use it to inform our own innovations and our own products moving forward. we don't want to be making the wrong decisions. So having that data from our suppliers plugged into the model enables us to see that actually we're moving in the right direction in terms of the foams that we manufacture. And every time we take a step forward, that we are definitely moving forward. And it's not a retrograde step because some of the emissions associated with it are moving in the wrong direction. So we can use that for that purpose to innovate with, but we can also use it for the purpose of innovating with the customer to ensure that their products are the best that they can be in terms of emissions and water uses. Obviously, they've got other components sometimes going into those products as well. We can plug them into our configurator using either their data or using the data from the EcoInvent databases or other databases to be able to generate the same sort of information for our customers, because some of them have science-based targets in the same way that we do. So they're able to track their improvements by using that model, using LCA data.
So there they can effectively create a roadmap.
Exactly.
To net zero.
Exactly.
Using informed decisions.
Yeah, we can follow our own roadmap and we can help others to achieve the targets that they need to achieve.
And bringing the kind of complexity of other materials into that product configurator and informing ourselves of the different materials, are all materials equal when it comes to that decarbonisation position? I know that plastics seems to get a bad rep a lot, Sam, doesn't it?
I think it's a hard one to quantify right now. I think to look at data across different suppliers is difficult. So I think it's, you know, what we're learning, at least when we're looking at the data and we're looking at people's improvements, is that it's very easy to compare within one company and see one company's projected progress and its progress over the recent history. When you start to look at supplier A versus supplier B, there's another level of complexity there. And that's not to say that one is doing an analysis better than another. It's just there's different methodologies at play. So I think the added complexity is that, so as we try to make different decisions, as we try to make better decisions, we've got to always understand what is a baseline to look at an improvement from one place to another. Yeah. Because everybody, at least most people, seem to be on a pathway to reducing their environmental impact, as we ought to be. But I think it's this idea of who moves first, whose data gets out there first, who's afraid of being embarrassed by some data, who's afraid of being told that's a bad number, this is a good number. I think there's a lot of reticence to start this more open discussion with people's data, and are we the same? I don't know, but you know, there needs to almost just be this step change in the way we talk about you know, the amount of CO2, the kilograms of CO2 per kilogram of foam. We perhaps need to stop thinking of that as good or bad numbers. We perhaps just need to look at it and accept it. These are the figures. This is the data that we have, and it's not good or bad. It's just a reflection of fact. And you know, we need to sort of get over ourselves a little bit first, so that the next step, the next kind of developments can happen. Because currently everyone's trying to look after themselves, generally, in a competitive marketplace. But there almost needs to become this next stage where we open up a bit more so that industry-wide change can happen. And you know, we've started to do some work. We work with Europol to see how we can bring the PU market to be a little bit different. Sorry if I've burst that bubble or perhaps stolen your thunder on that kind of discussion, Mike. But I think we're aware that if it's just us moving, there won't be enough of a change on the dial, will there? We need to all move together.
Absolutely.
So I think this is the type of thing that we're not learning, we're perhaps confirming to ourselves and confirming it with data behind it.
But I think there's a long way to go, Sam, in terms of the amount of verified data out there.
Oh, yeah.
Not just within our industry, but for other materials which, you know, are being used within our industries and sectors. I think we've all seen the sort of industrial global averages, and they are industrial global averages, that they're a number and quite often don't bear any reflection to what we're actually using. So I think as an industry and as other advanced materials industries, we just need that data.
We do, because I think the task in hand is very, very simple, and I think that there is a unanimous agreement among climate scientists now that if we are to avoid catastrophic climate change, we need to peak global emissions by next year. That's 2025 is next year. And then we need to halve global emissions, by 2030, and then continue that steep descent in emissions and meet a 90% reduction, so net zero by 2050. That is a colossal task, isn't it, if we are not making meaningful steps in decarbonising our supply chain. I think that the burden of proof is on the manufacturer now. I think we all accept that, and I think that's right. The people that make the materials should absolutely be the ones responsible to making sure that we understand, as Sam said, the impact of that product in a granular way, so we can do something about it. And I think I'm not an innovator, but you guys certainly are. That must feel exciting to have those facts to do something about it.
Yeah, the stats are worrying as much as exciting, but they are a driver to making the change. I think for us, what we've established is doing nothing is certainly not an option.
Yeah.
Understanding the data is the first point of starting to move forwards and starting to make the changes to the products, and then evaluating them again with that LCA database is the next step. And we'll keep taking steps, and we have that roadmap to follow the pathways that you're talking about. But I'll say it again, we can be as good as we possibly can, but unless we sell those grades of foam that are more sustainable to the customer, and there's that customer pull through, then we won't hit our targets in the same way that they won't hit theirs. And it's probably what this is about more than anything. I mean, we feel like we are standing up and shouting as loud as we possibly can. We attend every conference where we'll talk about it, and we'll be open with whoever wants us to talk about it, because it's too important not to.
Absolutely. It's a responsibility, isn't it? I think that Vita is a extremely unique business that I've never experienced before, where that culture is felt as soon as you walk through the door, that level of integrity, the level of responsibility, but also the innovation that drives us to say, actually, once we know what is fact and truth, let's move it, let's move the dial. And I think that's what we're doing here, isn't it?
I think one of perhaps a threat from what you introduced earlier, these sort of peak emission levels, the threat to us is that people have an immediate knee-jerk reaction and make the wrong decision.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's very easy to look at some materials like foam. Well, let's remove foam then. Yeah. Because it's a bit difficult to deal with right now. Others are perceived to be better to handle or to deal with. I think it's our duty, isn't it, to talk with our customers and to demonstrate the evidence, really, to try and help people and guide people where we can within our little area of influence on the global emissions scale. But I think we need to talk about it more and try our best to prevent people from making these knee-jerk reactions, these unintended consequences, which could make it worse down the line. Yeah. I think, as we spoke about earlier, when we're going to look at green claims and how this will be perhaps defended against or sort of improved upon, will stop people from saying this is 100% sustainable. Yeah. This is 100% green, because people who are relatively small sized companies who don't quite have the time or the money to invest in this research themselves, they'll go with the people that they seem to be most confident in the message that they're selling first, or the ones that they trust. But I think we need to make sure that as much as possible, people have access to the data that they need to make the right decision. Yeah. It can't just be in the hands of the few, can it?
Absolutely not. We're in this together. Whether we like it or not, I think, silos, the time for silos have gone. you know, and I think that now we're in a collaborative space where communication and trust are key, and science is going to back it up. I think that's a nice place to stop. So thank you so much for that. That was amazing. Loved that. Wow, that was great, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, it was, and the fact we could knock them down one by one is really testament to the work that he and the team are doing. And actually on the next podcast, we'll be discussing the importance of that innovative thinking.
Can't wait.